Hey guys, today I'm going to show you two extremely exciting games that I played against two candidate masters here in Almaty, Kazakhstan in the local round-robin tournament. And the second game was an everlasting game. It lasted like forever. We could not finish playing it. It went on and on and on, and you will never guess the ending. How it turned out to finish this game, no one could have guessed it. And the first game also, like, if you showed me the middle game and then told me the ending, I would be very surprised. So let me show both of those games to you. Very instructive stuff. Lots of complications in both of the games. So let's dive into this. So in the first game, I'm playing against a young Kazakhstani junior player, Bushuev Artur, who is rated around 1800 FIDE, but definitely underrated. And I open up with one d4. If you've been following my journey in chess for a long time, you know that I usually play e4, but I've been mixing up my openings recently, and d4 is an attempt to do so. And here we have the following opening: e5. I was surprised here. I was expecting just a normal King's Indian, what my opponent usually plays, but he played e5, and I realized that I don't really want to go into this endgame. I knew that this is one of the theoretical lines, and the king for black sometimes goes to c7, and even though you might think, oh, black has lost casting rights, it's all right, the position is around equal, and it's hard to play if you are unaware of the plans in this position and you've never played this endgame, and I haven't, and definitely my opponent has prepared this, so I decided to not go into this endgame. Instead, I decided, okay, I'll play e3, I'll play the setup like in the French. I will show you what the French has to do with it. So first, let me show you what happened next. So he goes here, I go here, g6, bishop e2, bishop g7, castles. Remember this position. Now, try to think, what if we reverse the colors? And what if white plays the same setup as black did, and black plays the same setup as white did? I can show you what happens. Exactly the same position with colors reversed. So instead of d4, e4, e6, d3 against the French. There is such a system. d5, knight d2, c5, not c6, c5, g3, knight f6, bishop g2, bishop e7, knight here, castles. Now this is exactly the same position, but with colors reversed. What we had in the game, black put their pieces on exactly the same squares like white did here, and vice versa. We get this position. It's the French with the white pieces with an extra tempo. I decided, why not play it, because I have an extra tempo. How bad can it be? And I go b4 here, because the plan of white here is to advance on the queen side, to break on the queen side, while black is trying usually to go e4, is trying usually to go rook e8, knight here, h5, rotate the knight here, attack, go bishop f5, queen d7, put pressure on the king, which is a standard plan for the King's Indian defense. So he goes rook e8, a4, now a5 is annoying, so black first stops it. I go b5, e4, knight drops back, knight f8, rotating the knight. Not only is it freeing the path for the bishop, but also this knight very often after h5 goes to h7 and g5. I've been playing this with black for a long time, so I knew the plans, and I knew that I am going to be facing an attack, but I was not afraid. I'm fine with being attacked, I'm fine with attacking. Let's see what happens next. I go bishop b2, finishing development, he goes h5, I go knight b3. Now I want sometimes b6, breaking open this this flank, sometimes c5, but the problem is now after c5 he can close the queen side with d5. I don't want him to close the queen side, so I need to find some plan to disallow him from doing this. But first I have to react to his attack. He pushes h4, and you know, if you've been following the neural networks, not just ChatGPT, but neural networks in chess, like AlphaZero, for example, AlphaZero has pioneered this h pawn push. If the h pawn gets to h3, it gets really annoying for white. There will be not enough space. all endgames will be bad if you allow the pawn to h3, and also you can get checkmated on g2. So that's why I disallow this. I go h3, knight h7. As I told you, the knight is going here, and very often in the king's Indian defense, black is willing to sacrifice material to get to white's king. So here I'm a little bit like, not a little bit, I'm honestly nervous that I can get checkmated. So I need some helpers, some assistants, some bodyguards for my king. So that's why I go rook e1, and after knight g5, I go bishop f1. The bishop is at least for the time being protecting my king. And here I was thinking of an idea for a sacrifice for him, to sack the knight, like the bishop like this, to have this f3 square for the knight. But I realized that, yeah, he can take the rook, and then I'll have two pieces for a rook and a pawn. Usually two pieces are stronger. Yes, he has left my king a little bit more bare than he used to be, but it's not a naked king. First of all, there is this bishop and a pawn, and also the queen, and they are protecting the king for the time being, and there are not enough pieces to attack with black. So I thought this should be good for me, and the engine agrees. The engine says it's actually very much better for white if black goes for this line. So black instead goes bishop f5, and here I decide that I need more defenders, and I want to rotate my knight like this, and I go knight e2. And here, for some strange reason, instead of going queen d7 or knight h5 trying to develop the attack, it is equal, but it's much easier to play this with black, because you are just attacking, adding more attackers, and your opponent has to struggle and doubt himself or herself. Am I getting checkmated or not? Why did I get myself in such position voluntarily? So I would prefer to playing this with black. Actually, before the game I did not anticipate the fact that I would get attacked. But okay, it happens, it's life. But instead of this, he somehow decides to now take on h3. Maybe he had second thoughts. Maybe he thought that this knight e2 is not in my favor and this worsens my position. I don't know why. I of course take, he checks me, I go here, and now he goes queen d7. He's not in a rush to take my rook because the rook is not going anywhere. And this rook, you know, you might think that this rook is menacing, rook is a rook, the rook, like Levi says, but this rook is useless. It's like Mark Zuckerberg when he went to participate in this UFC event with some UFC top guys, fighters whom he befriended apparently, and he was like, if you saw this video, you know what I'm saying. He was like standing there next to those UFC guys, like all hyped up, trying to do something. He had, I think, water or towel, and he wanted to give it to the UFC fighter, but nobody paid any attention to him. He was just standing there in between some tough UFC guys, and nobody was paying any attention to him. That's this rook. This rook is Mark Zuckerberg. You get the idea. So I go knight g1. Yes, it's a little bit weird to put the knight back on g1 where it initially was standing, and the bishop is on f1 and the king is on h1. It's like some freestyle chess Fischer random position, but the idea is crystal clear here. I want to get rid of this annoying knight on f3. I think it's more important than my rook, and I'm happy to trade it for this useless rook of mine. And now I have two pieces for a rook and a pawn, and as I told you, most likely it's better for white if I can coordinate my pieces. The only problem is that my pieces are not very well coordinated, but for black also there is a problem. Black is not having any concrete plans for attack. There's just one queen that wants to attack me, but I have enough defenders, and how is he breaking through? I don't know. So here my opponent first of all goes g5, trying to still push. And yes, you might have noticed that the a5 pawn is hanging, and even the engine says it's best just to take it with the knight, but never in a million years am I taking this pawn. I'm already enjoying nice advantage. Two pieces are better than a rook. I don't need an extra pawn. If I take this, even though the engine says it's the best move, my knight will take another move to get back to safety and to protecting the king. So instead of this, my first priority is not taking pawns, is developing. and somehow activating my pieces and preventing opponent's counterplay. So I go bishop e2, preventing the idea of knight h5 with the idea of f5, f4 next, which is a very good move. Practically speaking, I think it's much better than taking the pawn. He has to go into h7 now, which is a much more passive position for the knight than h5. But he has the same idea, f5, f4. So now I want to activate my pieces. My queen is stuck here. So what do? I go f4. Maybe it's not the best move according to the engine, but it retains advantage, and I really like it because now my queen gets more active, and I open up some files and some squares for my pieces. I now want to rotate my piece. For example, if he takes en passant, my bishop is very active suddenly. If he takes here, which is what happened in the game, I take back, and now my queen is active, I on this pawn. Now I can also rotate my knight, put it on e3, for example. If he goes e3, then my knight will go to f3. So suddenly my pieces get back to life, and that's more important than some pawn, meaningless pawn. Queen e7 is the move my opponent makes. He doesn't want me to take this pawn and moreover activate my queen. I go knight d2, rotating my knight. He goes queen f6, putting pressure on f4. And here I don't need this pawn either. I realize that I'm not wasting time on defense here. I need to activate my pieces. So first I go bishop g4. This square will be useful for my knight. He takes my pawn. I go knight f1. And he goes f5 here. f5 is a mistake, by the way. He should have gone e3, but we will not go through all the complications. f5 is logical. He attacks my bishop and also protects his pawn. But now bishop h5, you will see that my pieces are more active now than they used to be. He goes rook e6 and now bishop c1. And suddenly all my pieces, this bishop is active, this bishop is active. This knight is, even though it's standing close to the king, it's serving an important role as well. This knight is serving an important role as well. And the queen is almost trapped. He has to go e3, give up this important pawn. And I take it, and still the queen is hanging. And once he checks me, I go bishop f3. And once he goes here, I go bishop d5. And suddenly he is pinned. And he will lose material. Very, very suddenly, like within the span of 3 or 4 moves, I declined his pawn, I gave him my pawn, and I'm winning. So that's, I think, enough proof for the importance of not being too materialistic in chess. I hope this will be a lesson for you guys. He goes rook e8, trying to at least take back with the rook once I take his rook. But again, I'm not in a rush to take this rook. It's not only is it useless, but it's immovable. It cannot move because it's pinned. So I need to just finally coordinate all my pieces and put more pressure on this pinned piece. As they say, PP on the PP. Put pressure on the pinned piece. So first I go rook d1, taking the queen. Queen goes here. Now again, I'm not thinking about pawns. He can take my pawn. Okay. I don't really care. I go knight d2, winning another tempo, activating my knight. He takes the pawn, and now bishop f4. And I'm using the principle of PP on the PP. Putting pressure on the pinned piece. Now, this rook is attacked twice, it's defended once. He can, of course, go knight f8 here, but then I can go knight g to f3, for example, and put the knight here and put even more pressure on the pinned piece, and it's not very good for him, so he decides against this. He decides to go king h8, using the fact that this queen is also eyeing this rook. So if I take 2 times, he can take my rook. But I calculate that it's fine for me because I'm still up a piece and I should be winning this game. And here I come up with a plan that I really like. I first check him, discombobulating his pieces. He has to block. Whatever he blocks with is not so good. He blocks with the knight. And now I just want to go here and put more pressure on the pinned piece. Again, the same principle applies here. So first I go knight f3 here. Later on, I may put my knight on g5 to 8 with the attack. He goes queen f1, going for this pawn, but it doesn't matter. I go bishop g5, and here he tries pushing his pawn because it's one asset he has here. And I go bishop e7, putting pressure on the pinned piece. His only move here is king g8, not to lose immediately this piece. And now I go knight g5. And I'm threatening queen f7 check, and then taking and winning. So his only move is queen takes c4, controlling the f7 square. And here, I'm calculating something. I have like 1 minute on the clock, and he also has 1 minute on the clock, because we are playing a 45-minute game. 45 minutes per person plus 30-second increment after each move. That's the fast classical time control that they use these days. By the way, Alex Skvortsov, my guest, so recently he was a guest of my podcast. He's the guy who invented this format, and finally FIDE, after 10 years, recognized it as rated classical. So here I'm calculating takes, check. And if he goes here, this is checkmate, queen h7, which is why takes, check. He has to block with the bishop g7. And I'm calculating knight e6. And he cannot defend this bishop. So I'm taking this bishop with a checkmate next. So he has to resign, right? I have 1 minute on the clock. I'm double checking myself. And then I'm like, what the? Why did I forget about my king? Because he has checks. He has queen d5 check, king h2, queen a2 check. And my king cannot escape. It's a perpetual. And my clock is ticking. The seconds are ticking. And I have to do something. I panic. I immediately take. Okay, I have to make a move. He takes. It's still winning, by the way, for me. Now I check him. Still winning. He blocks. And I panic and I do not find the win here. And I just go knight e6 with the idea of taking. But again, I allow this perpetual check. And we agree to a draw because I cannot escape with my king. He's just perpetually checking me. But I had the win here. Instead of knight e6, I had a very easy win, very straightforward win. Check, check, and d5. Just blocking this queen. Now queen f7 is threatened, and after king h8, there will be queen e8, only move bishop f8, queen takes f8 mate. Very easy. I don't know how I didn't see it, but okay, it happens in time trouble. People make mistakes. The second game is even crazier, guys. Please fasten your seatbelts because it's going to be one hell of a ride. So let's dive into this. I'm playing against the Soviet candidate master, Sergei Solomatin. He's a veteran. He's rated not so high because he dropped his rating. He's rated like 1650, something like that. But he's a creative player and he can play chess. And he always plays some nonsensical openings. So this time he played knight d2. Well, very, very weird choice, but okay. I play my King's Indian setup against this. He goes e4, I go d6, preventing e5. He goes bishop d3, and here I'm like, very often when you are facing b3, a5, a4 is a good plan. And I decide, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to push the flank pawn. And the engine actually approves. It's a good plan. He goes knight e2. Very weird opening, like something like the cow opening, right? I don't really know why he plays such openings, but he always does this. I go a4. My idea is to put pawn on a3 if he allows it. And he allows it, surprisingly. And I push it to a3. Probably he thought that he can take this pawn and I will not be able to protect it later on, which is true, but he will take so much time doing this, and I will be able to generate lots of counterplay. So that was my assumption, and the engine approves actually of what I'm doing. Black is a little bit better already after 8 moves, which says a lot about the quality of this opening. So he goes bishop c1 and I go c5. But this game will be notable not because of the opening. Let me spoil something. First of all, it's impossible to guess the result of this game. You will never know how it ended. Like after having watched this video, please drop a comment and say whether you anticipated what happened in the very end. Because at the very end of the game, because if you anticipated it, you should be like, I don't know, Nostradamus or something. So he goes c3 here because c5 is intended to open this diagonal, which is wide open for my bishop now because he spent this time going back and forth with his bishop. So c3 tries blocking it. I go knight c6, adding more pressure on this pawn. He goes knight b1. Well, I anticipated that he can do this to take my pawn, but it's such a long process, and it's not the way you should play chess. Going knight d2, then knight b1. Bishop b2, then bishop back to c1. This is not proper chess, and of course I wanted to punish this. So I took, and I went queen b6, putting pressure on d4. Now d4 is hanging, and suddenly he realized that he cannot even save this pawn, because if this, then this, and yeah, everything is falling. If he goes d5, I can go here, for example, and then his rook on a8, a1 will be vulnerable. So he has to give up this central pawn for my flank pawn. Usually flank pawn is worth much less than the central pawn. So this is a moral victory for me, obviously. He takes on a3, I take on d4. The only good thing for him here is at least that he is getting developed. His knight is no longer on b1, his bishop will go to e3 and will no longer be on c1. That's the only good thing for him in the position. All other factors are in my favor. I have this great file for the rook, I have this great bishop. My queen is getting harassed a little bit. Harassment is not good, obviously, but here this lady will escape untouched and unscathed. So knight c2 tries harassing the queen again, but the queen draws back. Bishop d4. Bishop d4 is logical because he wants to control this diagonal, because these dark squares are like wide open for my attacks if he doesn't do anything. But here I have a very strong resource, e5, top engine move. I take in the bishop, and then I want to push d5 and just blow open the position and use the fact that if the position is very open, there is this principle of whoever attacks and creates threats first usually wins. So I want to be the first one who poses threats in this position. b4 is my opponent's response. I was considering queen c7, which is the best move, but I somehow got scared of some x-ray attacks on the queen, which shouldn't have bothered me. So I went queen d8. Still black is a little bit better. He draws back to c3, and now I should have not rushed. I rushed it and I went d5. I realized that he can take, but then I can take, and I thought that this position is good for me. But somehow I did not spend enough time here. I should have spent more time and still went queen c7 or bishop e6 and then prepared d5. Because once I went d5, takes, I somehow thought that maybe he'll sacrifice the exchange because that's his style. He likes sacrificing. And I thought this is the position he might want to get. And I decided he could have some compensation for the exchange if his knight magically teleports to f6 or to h6. Actually, if the knights could jump to to h6 here, then this would be a checkmate because, yeah, the long diagonal is controlled by the queen. But of course, I'm not allowing this, and I thought I should be winning this. If he sacrifices the exchange, he will not be in time to checkmate me. So that was my idea. I was anticipating sacrifice from his side, but I somehow neglected the fact that bishop c4 is a perfectly fine move, and the material is equal, his bishops are not so bad, and I had some advantage, but now it's back to equal, so it's not the most precise way to play for me. But this is not the craziest part of the game. Wait for it. So here I go bishop g4, he goes queen b1. He doesn't want to trade the queens, he wants to create a battery, putting pressure on the knight. I go queen c8, attacking the bishop. He goes queen b3, and I go queen f5. I'm attacking his bishop, and also I'm creating a devious trap that he fell into. He goes bishop d6. He has not enough time here because he likes getting in time trouble, and he's already in time trouble by this time. So he rushes it, he goes bishop d6, thinking that, yes, I have to move my rook somewhere, and then he'll take on f7, and I will collapse. But of course, I don't have to move my rook. Whenever you are attacked, any piece of yours is attacked. Your first reaction should not be, oh my god, I'm attacked, I should somehow run and hide my piece. No, you should think, how can I counterattack? And here, the obvious counterattacking move is b5. And suddenly we realize that his bishop is hanging, and he realizes, I realized it in advance, he realizes that his bishop has no squares. All the squares are controlled by me. So he has to give up the bishop and the second bishop, two bishops for a rook and a pawn. Again, similar scenario, two pieces for a rook. But this time is even better for me because I have two bishops. Two bishops are much better than a rook and a pawn. But there are two problems. One problem number one, is called the A pawn, the passed pawn. And problem number two is called the B pawn, also the passed pawn. And the problem is they are marching. He goes a4. And unless I do something really quickly, utilizing my two bishops, which are definitely stronger than a rook, but unless I take action quickly and do something, I can lose because those pawns are marching. And it's really not obvious how I am stopping them. So I go queen d3. Obviously he cannot take, because if he takes, I have a passed pawn of my own that will promote and win material. But instead he finds rook a3, top engine moves. Actually, he's already in time pressure, but he's finding very good moves. He has found several good moves in a row here. Immediately, like spending seconds, mere seconds on this. So if I take, he'll take with the rook, and his rook will support the push of the pawn, and I'm not going to allow this. Instead, I go bishop e2 here. I protect here, and I also win time by taking his rook. But his rook moves to b1. Now, both his rooks are supporting the advance of his pawns. And suddenly I'm like, I don't like this. I definitely should be winning, but he has some counterplay. I shouldn't have allowed it, but I couldn't have stopped it. And like, that's the nature of the position. But I'm still winning if I play precisely. I go rook d8, which is not precise. I rush it a little bit. I somehow forget that after b5, queen d1 check is actually not a threat. So if he takes, this will be a checkmate, of course. This will be a forced checkmate. But he's not obliged to take here. He can go knight e1 first, and now there is no checkmate and my queen is hanging. I have to drop back here, for example. Still it's winning, but he's pushing the pawns, and yeah, it's not so trivial. So instead of queen d1 here, I realized that, okay, I have to do something, add another attacker probably, so I go knight d5 to go here. That's my plan. I take in the rook, and also my bishop is now very menacing. Here he goes knight e1. I take in my queen, and I realized that probably I should trade the queens. Probably should be winning. I take, he takes. And now from afar, I was considering bishop c4, and I was like, okay, this should be winning because the rook that has no squares, really. If the rook goes here, I go here. I take in this rook. And wherever the rook goes, it will get hit with either a fork or a discovered attack by the bishop. So a1 or b2, then knight e2 check, and the rook will get hit. c1, knight e2 check, it will be a fork. And if rook b3, I'll just take it. If rook b4, then rook d1 is good enough, winning this knight, and also it's a checkmate threat. So I'm like, okay, looks very good if I go bishop c4 here. But then I'm like, okay, but he can hide the rook somewhere there. Still, I can go knight c3, and probably the rook is here not doing too much. Now it's not supporting the pawns, and probably I will win this game. So that would have been a very, very easy and logical conclusion of this game, but this did not happen. Somehow I decided, okay, rook h3, still he can fight on. Maybe I'll first go knight c3 and then bishop c4. It will be even better, which is what I did. I went knight c3, he went rook c1, and then I'm like, am I stupid? If I go bishop c4 now, he can just take twice. I forgot completely about this. And there is no checkmate because he can stop it with rook e3. And he will have those two passed pawns, and he will be playing for a win. And I'm like, oh gosh. Then I'm like, okay, I should still have the win. First of all, I thought I can take this pawn. But then he can push b6. And it's getting too dangerous. If I go, for example, rook b8, he'll push b7. Now rook c8 is threatened. I can go here, but I didn't really like my position. And the engine says already it's far from trivial. It's back to close to equality. So that I didn't like. Then I thought, what if knight a2? Attacking the rook, winning time. And I thought that if the rook goes somewhere like here, then bishop d1 is nice, winning the a4 pawn. But then I'm like, what if the rook goes here? Or here? Actually, the engine says here is better. Rook c6. And I was calculating rook d1, attacking the knight. But then he has this check, first of all, making me block. And then f3 or f4. The engine says f4 is also good. And if takes, king here. And suddenly both my rook and bishop are hanging. And if I go like somewhere here, he can just push his pawn, b6. Or he can take the bishop as well. But actually I didn't notice that this would be worse because of a fork. But even this is not so bad. Knight e1, rook takes c1, the engine says, and the pawns are marching b6, so it can be even losable by black. I didn't see rook knight c1 check, by the way. I was calculating this, and I thought that it's not obvious, but I somehow completely failed to think of rook c1, which is winning easily but I missed it. So the idea is that if he takes, I take with the knight, and everything is protected. I have 3 pieces for a rook, and even if I have to give up 1 piece for the pawns, I will be easily winning. But I failed to see rook c1 here. So in this variation, I saw this, check, blocks, f3, check, king f2, and I failed to see rook c1, which when you have several minutes on the clock is understandable. It's not the easiest calculation, even though I could have done it. But somehow I decided against knight a2, I decided against knight a4, and I went rook c8, which is even worse than, than knight a4. And now it's equal, according to the engine. He pushes the pawn, I draw back, he goes king h1, very nice move, because now knight e2 check is forced, is threatened. So he goes king h1, sidestepping. From afar, I neglected this move. And I realized that I'm pinned. So if my knight takes the pawn, he'll just take my rook and then push b7, and I'll have to give up my bishop for the pawn, which is exactly what happened. And I'm like, okay, this position, I cannot lose it. This position is unlosable. This is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking I can even play this for a win. You see how delusional I am. This position, obviously it's a draw. 4 pawns versus 3 pawns on the same flank with an extra exchange for one of the sides. Usually it is a draw. And this time it's also a draw according to the engine. But only white can win this, unless white does something stupid. If black does something stupid, white can win this. Let's see what happened next. So I went f5. He went with his king. I went knight c5, attacking the rook. Again, attacking the rook. I'm harassing the rook to try and make it leave the 7th rank to activate my king. Rook here, knight d4. Here, h5, pushing the pawn. Now bishop e5. Again, I want the rook to leave the 7th rank. Now finally I can activate my king. Knight c2. Here, very easy decision. You just take and make a draw. This is a dead draw. This is unwinnable. 0.0, the engine says. Because the pawns are on the same flank, and the rook versus bishop without the pawns is a draw. You can trade all the pawns here and make a draw. White cannot break through here. But instead of this, I decide, you know what? I'm going to play on. Maybe I can win this. Maybe, you know, he makes a mistake. I go knight b3. Maybe he fails to see the fork, for example. He doesn't. He goes rook b4. I go here. I decide, okay, I'll put the knight on this outpost. He attacks my bishop. I defend it. He goes knight b4. I go f4. And suddenly, I'm close to losing in this position. But he doesn't see it. You know, it's very tricky, the move that is winning this position. f3 is winning. Because if e3, with the idea of e2 check, king e1, bishop c3 check, king here, and queen. So this looks nice, but it's white to move. White can check me, and white can go knight d5. And the problem is that bishop c3 now is not possible at the end of this variation. After e2 check, just king e1, and there is no way for black to continue. And white is threatening this, which will be a fork with check. And if I go g5, knight e7 is checkmate in 1. Very nice. The king is just stranded here in the center of the board. So g5 is impossible. Otherwise, he'll just go knight e7, knight g6, win the pawn and win the game. So this is the first opportunity when my opponent could have won. That's not the only one. Spoiler alert. So f4, king e1. Also a logical move, but now it's back to approximate equality, even though black has to play precisely here, because the knight can get stranded and the pawns are not very reliable here. I go f3, takes. Now maybe I want to take this pawn. He goes king d2. Here bishop f4 was the way to go, but I went knight b3, and suddenly I'm losing again after king e3. Now this pawn is hanging. I have to go here, only move, defending this pawn. He checks me. And I realize here, we are both playing on increment, 30 seconds per move. I realized that, why did I do this to myself? Like, this could be already losable. I, of course, do not know the evaluation of the position at the time, but I suspect that only white can win this here. And he just calmly goes h3, just waiting. He doesn't have to rush. I go g5. And here he has a very nice win. Knight d3, attacking the bishop. The bishop has to move somewhere. And then rook a6. And I'm in Zugzwang. I have no move. All moves will worsen my position. So if my bishop goes here, he'll just take the bishop with check and then take the knight. The knight is secured here by the bishop, so the bishop has to not go here. Okay, what if the bishop goes here? Rook a5, pin, and win. The bishop will get lost. So only square, this also is not possible for the bishop because then the knight falls. So the only square for the bishop is h8, but then rook h6 will fork the bishop and the pawn and win the game. So the bishop cannot move. The king has no moves. The knight, if the knight moves anywhere, the king will take the f3 pawn and win the game. So only logical move is g4. But then rook a5 check, king g6, protecting this pawn, but then knight f4, fork. And the h5 pawn falls, and then g4 and all other pawns will fall, and I will lose. But fortunately for me, in this position, this idea was not spotted by my opponent, knight d3. Instead, knight c6 is what he chose. He practically forced me to trade the knights. Okay, now I have to trade the knights. Now I think, okay, most likely it's going to be a draw. I will not lose this game. Spoiler alert, you will see that the ending of this game will not be what you expected. Let's say it like this. So I go g4. I need to not lose this pawn. He can trade like this, and most likely it will be a draw, but he decides to go h4, preserving more pawns on the board. Maybe he wants to go here and try and win my pawn, but I have bishop f6. I'm harassing his pawn. He checks me, he pins me, he checks me, and he goes here. He decides to give me this pawn because otherwise it will be a move repetition and a draw, and he decides to try playing on, which is a logical choice because he's not risking anything. Because he can check me perpetually, I have to go back. Now he goes back because he doesn't want to give me this pawn, because then he will be risking something. Bishop with 3 pawns is already at the menace. I go king f6, check, he goes back, I go here. He goes rook a2. Again, not repeating the moves because he can always make a draw. He can just poke and prod and maybe I'll make a mistake. I check him and I go king g6. And here, suddenly, I think, what if I really win this game? Like, is it even possible? That would be an epic tale if I win this game. What if I suddenly start marching my h pawn? If he's careless, I can do that. But I cannot do it, unfortunately, right now. Because he just checks me, I have to block, and he goes king f4. And if I go h4, he'll just take my g4 pawn and I will lose this game. So I have to wait, I have to be patient. I go king g7. We wait, I go bishop h4, again harassing his pawn. He drops back, I go king g6. Posing a very primitive threat of bishop g5 check, but he does not fall for it. I check him, and suddenly he gives me just one chance, and I use it. I push h4, and I'm winning. Instead of this, here he should have gone king g3, which would be a dead draw. Again, I'm not breaking through. It's a draw. But he goes here, he forgets about h4, and now I'm winning. I don't know this at the time of the game, of course, but I feel that I have some chances because my h-pawn is finally marching, and he doesn't even have the rook c1 resource to stop it because the bishop is controlling the square. So he checks me, and I hide on h5, and suddenly he has no more checks. He goes to c8, but I go h3. If he checks me from behind, I can block, and my pawn will queen. He goes rook b8 because he wants to go to the first rank to stop the pawn, and the c1 square was controlled by the bishop. But now I can just push h2, rook b1 and king h4, and my king will march, escorting my pawn to the queen and square, and I will win this game. He goes king f5, and now I find like the most beautiful move of this game. It's not the only move that's winning, but it's the flashiest. Bishop to e3. This bishop was looking for purpose in life all this game. It was going back and forth. It was trying to find some stable position. It was on g7, you remember. Then it was opened up. It was trying to block from checks, hide the monarch, help the monarch, to strengthen the knight on d4. Lots of roles this bishop was playing. This bishop was a son, a husband, like a patriot, like a warrior, I don't know, an ambassador for black. And suddenly it sacrificed itself, finding its true purpose in life, to sacrifice, helping his brothers and sisters advance to become queens. And that is so poetic, guys. It is so poetic. And if white takes, my pawn's just queen, so he does not take. He goes through b7, setting the last trap. If I queen here, white wins because check, and rook takes h6 will be a checkmate. Very funny way to end this game. That is not how the game ended. The game ended in a different way. I took on f2. Now my king has the g3 square, absolutely winning. Rook here, and I go king h3. And my opponent resigned in this position because if he checks me, I'll block with a bishop. Otherwise, I will queen next. This is the unexpected ending of this game. Well, I should have won the first one. I should have won the second one, but still 1.5 points out of 2 points today. Not that bad, in my opinion. Very hectic day. If you enjoyed this video, if you are happy that I'm making those recaps after a hard day in the office, so to say, playing and then recapping this all, please give me some love in the comments and write whether you expected the outcome of the second game to be what it was, what it turned out to be. See you in the next one, guys. Don't forget to comment and like. Bye-bye.